Hello and welcome back to GeekVerse Sidequest, your weekly stop for video game news, reviews, retrospectives, and more here on the GeekVerse Podcast Network. I'm your host, the little brother, Dylan Muss, and I have with me the apprentice himself, Kirklin Patzer. Welcome back to Sidequest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very, very well. I've been just holding off talking about this game to you, because I knew we were going to be recording this. So I'm very much been looking forward to just discuss this fabulous game that I had the pleasure of playing. So yeah, should be a good time.
I love to hear it. Yeah, this is a special episode of Sidequest. We're not going to do the games we've been playing, no news. We are 100% talking about A Plague Tale Innocence, which came out in 2019. So this is a retrospective, something we plan to do more of in the coming year. We're going to do this for God of War this year as well, for God of War 2018. But yeah, a little more retrospectives thrown in the mix there. And yeah, I'm also very excited for this. We've had a lot of messaging to each other how we're feeling about this game, but we haven't really explicitly had a conversation, so I'm very excited for that. I guess just a couple quick shout-outs today, that being that you could have been listening to this episode nice and early up on Patreon as we're pre-recording this one, about a week early than when it's hitting the free feeds. All sorts of other stuff up there as well, early ad-free episodes. What else have we got going on? Join the Discord. That's a good place to be. Check out the socials. Thank you to Taylor for doing those beautiful thumbnails, the one we're using as the background as well, and Amanda for doing that music as well. And then on the main feeds, that's just TV show city right now. We've got House of the Dragons, Rings of Power, She-Hulk, Andor's up there now too. The boys did a review for Smile last week.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of stuff, so go check out that main feed. Anything you would like to shout out, Kirkland, before we get into this?
I don't think so. I think you did a fabulous job. Let's get into it.
All right, so A Plague Tale Innocence. This came out in 2019 from Asobo Studio. I don't think you'd call this a AAA team, but probably in that AA space. They're certainly not indie, but they're not quite on the AAA tier. And I feel like this is kind of their first major title. They also worked on in some respects, their support studio on Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is a very strange connection. And I was like, man, why does the Asobo Studio sound familiar? And it's because I've just every Xbox, conference, whatever it is, they always have a Asobo Studio in that trailer. And I was like, oh, that's a weird connection. But anyway, they're working on that. But then, of course, we're doing this because A Plague Tale Requiem, the sequel, is coming out later in October here. So we're a couple weeks before that. We're going to talk deeply about spoilers, but of course we'll do our little spoiler-free section. Is this worth going back to check out? All that kind of stuff. I will say the one unfortunate thing is that this game has been on Game Pass for, I don't know how long, but maybe a year or something like that. They just pulled it off in September, like a month before the new one comes out. I would have loved if they had that timing to just at least until that new one's out so people can get in there. Unfortunately, I was hoping that when we did this episode, it could tell people, oh, go check it on Game Pass, but you can no longer do that. But I guess in our non-spoilers thoughts, we can talk about if this game is worth the price of admission. So starting with you, Kirkland, some non-spoilers. This is a very story-heavy game, so
yes.
this non-spoiler section might not be too long, but that's okay. But yeah, what do you think about this game? It's kind of like a stealth action narrative game, all sorts of little genres you could put in there, but yeah, maybe about 10, 12 hours long. We're both done with the game now. So how was your experience with it?
Yeah, like I was hinting and alluding to, like I had such a fabulous time with this game. This is one that I feel like when it first came out, it was like right on my radar. I knew it was gonna be like a very thematic, like story heavy game. And I always I feel like I always had it on my wish list, but it's like never enough to like fully commit. But like only heard good things. Like I had stellar reviews, and then when the second one was coming out, of course we did our video game draft, and I picked it because I was just like, man, like from what I've heard about the first one, like this one's probably just gonna be stellar. So I'm so glad that we like again had a reason to do this, so I could finally commit. I played it on PlayStation, which it ran absolutely beautiful. I think it was like a definitive edition on like the PS5.
Oh, cool. That's good.
And yeah, it visually it's such a beautiful game, and it gripped me in from like the get-go. I don't want to say too much, but like right away at the start of the game, like it had me like emotionally. I'll get into specifics of what the particular moment was that just had me, but it was like within the first few minutes it was like, oh my gosh, like this is gonna be tears, I think, going through this one. And I just really couldn't put it down. Like we both kind of talked about it off cast, how like I felt like the chapter lengths were just like perfect. Like I never felt like it was like, oh, I have to get to the end of this chapter so that I can like, I don't know, put it down for now or whatever. It was just
Yeah.
like, it like gave me time to like breathe when like the chapter would end. Very nice, like I don't know, just break in between sessions, whatever you wanted to do. But yeah, like talking about like gameplay and stuff, it's totally my type of genre of game of like balancing that story elements with like the stealth and the puzzle, just the puzzles that you have to do throughout the game. And I think something that can, I don't know why I was so surprised about it, but like it really caught me off guard was just how attached to the characters I got. Like all of the different side characters that we come across, I love them all. Like I was just so attached to them, and that's why I just like made it like I was so emotionally attached to it. And the fact that the runtime was only like 10 to 12 hours, it made me able to just like sit there and like play through it like through a weekend or whatever. And yeah, I had such a fantastic time with this. You mentioned it was on Games Pass. Obviously, if you have Games Pass, check it out. Unfortunately, it's not on there anymore. I got it on like PlayStation summer sale, whatever it was. So it was like $15, and even if it was
what the
like
price tag is on there
Yeah.
these days.
like I could definitely see it being like around the $30 range, like regular $40 if not. But I totally think. I mean, again, I got it on a sale, so I think it was 100% worth it for the money that I had.
About $40 US, 50
Yeah.
Canadian. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely, if you're interested in like that type of genre, funny enough, I like because I just love what this game was. I like reinstalled Tomb Raider. I never played through that one all the way, so it's like that type of similar.
Like the first reboot one, you mean?
Yeah, the first reboot. I have the other one as well. That was like another PlayStation Now, or not now, PlayStation Plus, monthly game. So, yeah, I just got totally hooked on this type of genre again, and
Nice.
I'm having lots of fun with going through Tomb Raider again, and I think this game really just reawakened that enjoyment that I get about these types of games. So
Amazing.
yeah, I didn't say like anything about any of the characters. I'm gonna save all that for spoilers, but overall, yeah, I had such a fantastic time with this, and I'd recommend it to anyone that's like slightly interested in it. Just do it.
Yeah, I am pretty much in the exact same boat as you. And you know, one thing just to mention right off the bat, I feel like I've heard a lot of comparisons of this game to a God of War, to a Last of Us, and in some of the like tone in terms of like how narrative focused it is and how the gameplay is. Even like you are playing a character and you have a smaller companion character with you that you're doing stuff with, and you know those games, particularly Last of Us, like I've always talked about, gameplay wise, these just do not do it for me. I just can't get into these. We talked about it last week on the newscast. So I don't know what it is. There was something just different about this, whether it's the stealth, whether it's the mechanics with the rats and the fire. We'll talk about that in depth. Even like those puzzles that are like super easy and don't really take any thought, but you got to go through the motions of doing them. I just found myself enjoying some of that stuff more in here. Now, it's not all perfect, but generally the gameplay was good. But I think for me, the thing that just shocked me was like, this is like top 5, if not potentially just the best looking game I've ever seen in my life. It looks so fucking good. The like just fidelity of stuff. I really like the style as well. It's a very like kind of realistic style and whatnot. But man, it looks just amazing. And we'll talk about maybe the rats can sometimes be a bit janky and stuff like that. But overall, like for not being a AAA game, like easily the best looking non-AAA game. Now, if you're talking like specific styles, maybe you'd find something that looks nicer. But in terms of just raw fidelity, like walking through that forest at the beginning, it's like, I don't know. I could not tell you exactly what ray tracing means. People always talk about it. But like, oh, those sun rays coming through the leaves in this beautiful green field, forest. Oh my God, it sets the scene. Like it sets that setting right away and you're just totally into it. So I really loved this game from start to finish. I definitely have some things I will nitpick here or there, but yeah, I was just so gripped by that story and the characters. There's a lot of like children in this, but I think the acting's all good and they feel like believable characters, which is something we've talked about in movies in the last few years, even in the GeekVerse era. It's like, man, kid actors are just insanely good now, and we can get these different types of stories that are very compelling. And I feel like I don't know how many games I've played that are like a very realistic story that like have kid characters in there, but I feel like this is like some of the highest quality that I've seen. And yeah, I like that it's something different. Like French. Obviously, it's like English. They're speaking in English, but they all their French accents and stuff. So it just feels a bit different too than what we're used to in more traditional games. So Yeah, I'm in love with this game. I think it's definitely worth the price tag. Go check it out. I'm very excited for the sequel. We'll talk. I don't know if you've seen any trailers for the sequel. We'll
No,
talk
I
a
haven't
little
yet.
bit about that at the end of the episode. But I'm curious to see where it goes. But overall, like this is just such an incredible first game in what is now going to be a series. I don't know. Who knows how many of them they'll make? We'll see. But like whatever this studio is working on next, with the exception of like Flight Simulator, I don't need to do that. But like whatever they are primarily working on, I'm absolutely going to be checking out from here on out. So, anything else you'd want to say, non spoilers? Like I said, it's such a
Um,
narrative heavy game that's like I don't know if we want to get into too much, but
I mean, I feel like the last thing I could say is just like I feel like I for the type of person I am and like my own life, like I never would have like dropped full price on like a game like this, like right at
sure.
release. But like this game actually made me want to do that now for the sequel. Like I am so interested in just these characters and where their story is going next, and just going back to that
You got
world.
to get on the Game
It's
Pass train, Kirkland. The second one's gonna be on there day one.
I'm just holding out for yeah. Don't support Xbox.
Game Pass on PlayStation, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully that happens one day. We'll see. But
We'll see.
yeah, no, I'm loving it. So let's get into
Cool.
it. I think.
Yeah. Let's take our very first ad break here. Then we can just kind of have a nice cut right into talking about this. Okay, we are back. I kind of want to do this retrospective a little bit differently than we have in the past, in that I like this is such a story heavy game. I took very like thorough notes of the story as it goes through, so I almost kind of want to go through chronologically, and then we'll
All
stop
right.
on certain topics as we get to them. Let's try that and see how it goes. But I think another reason for doing that is because the first chapter of this game has so much to talk about in just that one chapter alone. We talked about kind of just walking through that forest at the beginning, very beautiful, and it's like your classic tutorial. It's teaching you how to use your slingshot and all that stuff. But yeah, I think it really gives you a good introduction of your character of Amicia, and then you get introduced to your father there as well, and your dog. What's the dog's name? The
Leon.
dog's name?
So
Yeah,
it's like lion, but in
yeah,
French,
yeah.
Leon.
So obviously something happens in this, but in terms of just that first couple minutes, what did you think of these characters and just in general, like Amicia, her father? What do you think of those characters?
I I mean, I feel like I had no idea what the story was going into it, so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know. I thought she was like a thief or something. How it got
Okay.
introduced, so
Yeah.
it completely threw me off that she was like a noble family, I guess, and it again it completely surprised me, and I thought it was so interesting just seeing her like and her father's dynamic, but also like how she has kind of just lived with the situation that she never gets to see her mom because her mom is so focused on like just
Mm-hmm.
carrying her brother that like it seemed like she's never even like met him before, like, or like if anything
Yeah.
very very
Mm-hmm.
rarely. And like within the first like minute there, like I felt like I just totally understood like the, not fully, but like I got a solid idea what the family dynamic is. And yeah, I loved all of like the French stuff. And yeah, like with the whole like dog thing, that's where it was like, okay, I haven't seen much about this game, but I know there's not like a dog that goes with these with these
Yeah.
travelers, so I know something's gonna happen with it. I'm a big dog person, so like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he perishes pretty early on in the game, and that's when I was like basically choking up. I was like, oh my god, like this is heavy
I
already.
know it
Like
gets you quick, right?
it's like, okay, now I'm gonna be expecting a lot of people dying, and a lot of people that I'm gonna be loving are gonna be dying probably going forward in this game. So but yeah, no, like again, like it's similar thing that I could compare like the opening of Last of Us, how it just like, holy shit, this is chaotic. Okay, this is kind of what's happening in the world that we're like
Mm-hmm.
jumping into the game, and then it's just like a character dies, and it's just like, oh my god, like I don't even know this character, but it still just got me really
Yeah.
early on. So yeah, just great like tone setter early on, and that's before even like the plague stuff comes into play, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
like the main mechanic that you're kind of dealing with in the, I mean, as Amicia. So,
Yeah.
um, I love the opening of this game, and also like you mentioned, like as soon as the game started, I was just like moving my camera around as Amicia is like talking to her father. I'm noticing like her mouth's moving and everything too, and I'm like, this
Yeah.
is just such a beautiful game. You got
Mm-hmm.
those ray tracing sun rays. I call them
Yeah.
god rays when they just look so
Yeah.
like
There you go.
gorgeous.
Yeah, it's the you're right. The tone is set immediately. You're like already heartbroken in the first 5 minutes of it, and like even just the way that whole scene is shot when the dog runs away, and then you kind of have to run down that hill, right? And then you like I think you jump over a tree or something, and then you're just like in a darker point of the wood where there's like less like vegetation on the ground. Like you're just immediately in a scarier place, and it takes a few minutes before you find the dog, and then you obviously see what happens to him. And then I mean that sets up a great mystery because as you mentioned, like you don't actually really go deeper into what exactly happened to the dog specifically for a while, really, until you're like getting more into that supernatural stuff and what's going on there. So it's like a good mystery, but then you're kind of like moved along to the next scene like right away. So it works well, and especially in hindsight too. I think the family's dynamic is so interesting in this game. We don't really see a ton of the mother and father interacting with each other, but just the dynamic of the mother and Hugo. The mother's name I have it written somewhere. We'll remember it. We'll get to it at some point. But her and Hugo, obviously, they're going off doing their own thing. She's taking care of him, and we find out some other reveals later. But I like that you get that scene with Amicia and her father, even if he's not around for much of the game as well. It's nice to see that dynamic. So. Yeah, I mean, pretty soon after that, you go back into the town, and the guards are busting down doors and all that kind of stuff. And then even more heartbreak is happening as your father gets killed, and you see that. And then, scooching along, there's your mother dies off screen, which I knew immediately. They didn't fool me at all. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is not on screen. I know what this means. We're going to see her later. So I don't know how much they were trying to trip you out on that. There's already enough heartbreak, but I feel like they were trying to fool you, but it didn't really work on me.
For me, yeah, I completely didn't buy it. I knew she wasn't dead. I feel like maybe it was just to like convince like Hugo and like Amicia that like from the character's perspective, maybe they think that she died, but like for us the viewer, it's pretty if you've seen a few stories like this before, it's like I know what game they're playing at.
And they're talking about that like constantly, right? Is the mom's death? So obviously it is important that it's established.
Beatrice,
there.
by the way, that was her
Beatrice.
name.
Thank you. Also, just quick note, I really love the design of their little town that they're in. I like walking around it. We go back there later a couple times. But even like the design of their house and stuff, like this is one of those games where I'm just like in each room, like looking around at the decorations on all the tables, especially Beatrice's office. It's got all the potions and different vials and tinctures and all this fun stuff in there. So I really like
burners.
Yeah, even like Hugo's room's got all this like fun toys and stuff in there. He's got his little fort. So I really like that stuff.
I feel like some games when you're like entering a village like that, just I don't know, like the scale of the buildings and stuff can feel different. Maybe I could compare it to something like an Elder Scrolls. Like when you enter like a town like that, it doesn't like, there's like just a big house that you can enter and interact with. But like here, when you're in like the city streets, you feel like you're in like a big city. And like when you're like just their house alone, like there's so much to it and so many different areas and like rooms and stuff like that. And it's all just like so like finely detailed and like you said, I was just like taking it all in. Like there's so many moments when I'm just like, I know I should be progressing, but I'm just like looking around, panning around the camera, and like just their attention to detail. Like there's so many maybe not so many, but there's quite a few instances where you like go around and you'll interact with something, and then like Amicia or like Hugo will like say something, and it's just like nice. It's a similar feeling that I get when you're playing like Dishonored. You pick up like a note. You don't need to do that, but it just fills in the cracks a little bit. So I like all that.
Yeah. And in this sequence when you're kind of exiting the town is when you kind of get introduced to the stealth mechanics. So we're both big stealth fans. I'm curious how this game lands in terms of that. You got the classic, making noise to cause distractions. You got a lot of tall grass and things like that. Guards that are maybe too stupid than is like realistic, but it's like it's fine. So yeah, like how do you think this? I shouldn't ask how this stacks up to other stealth games because this is not a stealth game. It just has a stealth element to its gameplay, of course. But what did you think of those elements of the game?
Yeah, like you said, like it's not the most in-depth like stealth heavy game that I've played before, but like I felt like the big thing about those stealth challenges that I could call them, like little moments that you have to like get through something like with stealth. It was mostly like I was looking at it like a puzzle. It's like, okay, like this map is designed this way so that I can like utilize the things that they're giving me. It's not so much like, oh, okay, I'll just wait for this guard and then I don't know, like you know what I'm talking about, like different stealth game like mechanics and like the way that you would tackle that situation. So I thought it was fine because it wasn't like I was able to just like speed run through it. Like I did kind of have to think about it, but it wasn't too challenging, but at the same time, it allowed me to just kind of focus on the story more.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely been instances when like I'm kind of interested in a game, but like I'm just getting, I'm just like slap my head against a wall. I can't get through a certain part, and then you just kind of get frustrated. This game didn't have a difficulty setting, did it?
I don't think so. I could be
Yeah.
wrong. I don't think
Because
so.
as I was going through it, I was curious because
There's like a new game plus, so maybe that.
Oh, is there? Okay, I didn't even
I
check
believe
about
there
that.
is. Yeah, maybe that like amps up the difficulty. Or something.
I was gonna say because I was just gonna say like I feel like that could be a lot more like after I played the story, it could be really interesting trying to just do it on like a super hard difficulty, like just master it. I don't know. Yeah, because I think that would be sweet. It would just give you another excuse to go through the game. There's so many like different like things that you can collect, like the Hugo flowers. That I feel like I was searching around the maps like pretty thoroughly, but like I'm like, holy shit, I missed 2 in this map or this level.
Yeah,
right
I
here.
feel like I got like 5 of them, and like on the page there's like a slots for like at least 30 or 40 of them or something like that, right?
Yeah, and like I feel like they do a really good job with the levels to just like hide things because, like I said, like I feel like I was kind of checking everything out, but clearly I missed a lot of different areas that I could have gone. So that's another excuse to jump back through the game. But it's good to know that there's possibly like a new game plus because again, that's kind of what I was looking for.
Yeah, yeah. I like the stealth enough. I think that there's enough. For me, what this game does well is that has a lot of variety in there between like these more straight up puzzle sequences where you're like moving a dial or levers or something like that, and then the stealth sequences, which are a different kind of puzzle. But you're right that they are very much a puzzle. But then there is ones that are more kind of combat focused, and so you kind of get a mix up of these. And then the game's runtime is short enough, and there's enough variety in the tools, which we'll talk about some of the tools later, that you're kind of always doing something new. So I don't feel like even if you're doing a stealth sequence again, maybe you have a couple new tools. So now you're having to think about, okay, how do these things interact with each other? What can I do here? And then obviously when the rats get thrown in there too, that totally changes just how you can interact with the maps and the levels and all that. So I think that works really well. And yeah, I think I'm just enough of a stealth fan that I liked it here because it is like well done for what it is. It's not like a janky stealth system. And one thing I really liked is that they have this thing going on where like around the edge of the screen, it's like a few pixels on the edge of the screen, it'll have like a white like bar or something like that kind of shows you where enemies are. So if you're like back, let's say you're facing one way and there's an enemy behind you, the white, it's hard to describe it, but like essentially there's this little white indicator to show where an enemy is. And I thought that was really a smart way to show your surroundings, because that's always a thing with games. Like you can't just quickly whip your head around, or I guess you could if you turn your sensitivity up or something. But I felt like that was really good at making the stealth sequences feel good, where you can know where enemies are even if they're not on your screen directly. And it's nice too because at some point I turned the HUD off because I wanted just a nice clean empty screen, and then you can go individually into the settings and then turn just that on. So I had the HUD off, but then I kept that white thing on.
Okay.
So I really like that they allowed that customization because I could make the experience exactly how I wanted it to be. So I like doing that as well.
That's funny because when you're describing that, I had no idea what you're saying because I turned off the HUD, but I didn't realize you could go back and like select what you wanted off. Because it's always nice that they give you the accessibility to like customize the experience for the gamer. Like that's the way it should be for across all games. Damn you, Nintendo. But anyways, I feel like the game did just such a good job at like allowing me to know where my surroundings are going, because I was just kind of like relying on the audio, and I thought it did a good job at like projecting like where the threats and where my like allies are like speaking from. But yeah, like what you were mentioning, that little like, because it's not too intrusive, it's not like a big like pop up like here's an enemy. So yeah, credit to them.
You mentioned this where like Hugo and Amicia are almost like complete strangers at the start of this game, which Hugo is what, like 7 or 8 years old or something like that? Maybe
something like that.
A little bit younger, and Amicia is maybe double that. So you would expect that they would know each other better. And this was, I think, one of my biggest questions, like playing through the game, because I get it, like he's sick, but I don't feel like that like justified them not having like any interaction with each other. I think by the end of the game, I get it more, and obviously there is this part of this sickness, and whether or not it's contagious or not, I guess it's a very novel like sickness that he has. So who knows? Like Beatrice is really the only one who would have any sort of idea. I guess there's Lorenzi and like a couple other characters that maybe have some knowledge on it, but overall it's probably safe. But I think another layer to it that I hadn't really thought about until afterwards was probably that Beatrice accepts that there's probably a good chance that things don't end well for Hugo, or that he never gets cured, things like that. And I almost wonder if part of it is her trying to specifically put that wedge in there so that if he does die or something else, that Amicia wouldn't be like as emotionally connected to him. I wouldn't be as distraught if that were to
Right.
happen. Is that kind of a read you take, or do you have like another justification of why they were as isolated as they were?
No, I definitely agree with you to an extent because I feel like throughout the story I was waiting for some sort of excuse on like, is he contagious? Is he not? Like they don't really talk about that. So like I don't know. I just kind of assumed because it's stressful times. Like last resort. That's just why Amicia is like surrounding him. Like they're not really worried about like contagion,
Yeah.
but they didn't really ever say that he was contagious. So I didn't really know the ordeal there. But I think what you laid out totally makes sense, like story wise, that she was just trying to keep him away. Because also because like what he has, the what was it called, the amygdala or something? Gosh.
Yeah, God, I probably have it
Something
written
like
here.
that,
Let me see if
yeah.
I can find the name. While you
Whatever he's got, like Beatrice knows that it's like super dangerous and a lot of bad people want it. So maybe just the less people that know about Hugo's situation, the better. So probably just protecting everyone. Ignorance is bliss in that regard.
It's true. I'm sure we'll get to that point in my notes. I can't do it. Can't find it. What the name of that thing is.
Yeah, it'll pop up.
Moving along to the next sequence of the game is, I guess, yeah, when Amicia and Hugo get paired up and you are off on your way, and you go to another town where the plague has hit heavy at this point. A lot of the doors are like crossed out. People don't want to interact with you. I really liked this level. I just feel like I liked how tight the streets were. It made it feel kind of claustrophobic. I like that doors were just closing as you get near them and stuff like that. And I just love the design of that city too. Just very cobblestone heavy and wooden doors and all that stuff. Just, I mean, a lot of the just castle-y areas in this game. Just like these are some of the best looking castles I've ever seen in games. So I am totally down to be crawling through them. But yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff in here. One is that like some of these villagers are riled up and acting kind of crazy and chasing you and all that. And I think that chase scene is pretty solid. But I think maybe my favorite sequence here is when this old woman opens her doors to you and helps you out. And there's a sequence where Hugo is kind of in the back room and he's kind of bored, so he's like finds this hammer and he's like smacking on a table or something like that. And Amicia's like getting annoyed at him that he's doing this, making so much noise, but he's like not listening because he's just a little kid doing his own thing. And she ends up like yelling at him, and then he runs off. And I love that. I mean, obviously the kind of tension, but also the relationship building between these characters who are siblings but have been so isolated from each other is so compelling. It's so well done, and I think this is maybe one of the highlight scenes for me, especially in the early stages of the game. Just that frustration that they both have with each other for different reasons. Then they end up coming back together and are a bit stronger for it. And I think that's all like really well written and very, very accurate. So I really like this sequence as a standout level overall.
Oh, absolutely. I also like from the start of the game, like this is the most intense that it like this is like the peak, like from the start of the game of just like suspense and like intensity. Like you're just in hot pursuit. You're going from safe in in like your noble house or castle, whatever the hell it was, to like just running for your absolute life, like with your little brother that's kind of a stranger in hand, like. And then as you mentioned, just how claustrophobic those cities felt, and like you're so on your own. Like all like everyone's trying to find you. And then when it got to that point of like just a dead end, like what's gonna happen here, and then just that one door opens, like I had like sweaty palms in that moment. Like it was super intense. And I feel like anytime a game has those sequences where you're like running, there's like two ways, and then all of a sudden you see someone down one of the ways, and it's like I can't go that way, and you have no time to like really think about it because there's people on your heels. It's really intense. And and then leading into that moment, like when all of a sudden Hugo's like running from you, it's like, okay, we just got out of like the fire. or out of the frying pan, whatever the saying is. And now I have to chase like my little brother. It's like the last thing that should be happening into just like a super dangerous area. And again, yeah, it was just building upon, because you get like a moment to breathe for a second, like through that little like interaction cutscene with this lady. Get your new outfits, you know, looking all ready for battle. But yeah, it was intense. I completely agree with what you said.
And in this sequence too, in the old woman's house, is when you get like, I think she gives you a change of clothes, and this is when you get like introduced to upgrading your sling, and so you're like just collecting materials and upgrading it. So I want to talk about this briefly, which is just that this is something I feel like I've criticized in like so many games the last few years, is just throwing these kind of RPG sort of upgrading systems in there that don't really feel purposeful, don't feel like they're adding much, but they're kind of in there anyway. And I don't know, I feel weird about this one because I think when I was playing through the game, I was liking it enough, you know, upgrading my gear, collecting those materials. But then when I think back on it, it's like, man, there's a lot of like micromanaging you're doing of like you can only hold a very select amount of materials. So I found like oftentimes I'd be like, okay, let me build a bunch of stuff, and then I'll like go pick up this other thing from this other room. And it's like, I don't know if that really adds much to the game. And I imagine they're going to do it again in the sequel. But I almost feel like this game would once again just be better off without that kind of upgrade system, or at least one where you're gathering materials in the world and building stuff. No, obviously there's the whole ammo system as well. That's kind of a different thing, but they use the same materials at times. But yeah, do you have any profound thoughts about the kind of upgrade system in this game?
Honestly, for me, I quite enjoyed it a lot. I felt like it added to just like your resources are really valuable, and like that micromanaging, at least for me, it really worked. I don't know, like, and then like you said, like I would really like min max like my resources to what I could. I liked as well how like you have to balance like upgrading your stuff, like making ammo for just like devices to like get through a level, but like if you screw up and like, you have to like redo it, then all of a sudden you're like fishing away from your resource bank, so you like maybe can't like upgrade something. And by the end of the game, like I didn't even have all the upgrades, so I feel like it forced me to kind of again like really strategize that way, and for me it added to the overall experience.
I found in the last few chapters I like almost didn't need anything, so I like stopped looking.
Yeah.
You know, like I like stopped going out of my way to pick stuff up, or oftentimes there's like you can see in the level, it's like, okay, this is not the critical path, but I can go on this little side tangent and I'll probably find a chest that has some crap in it. And I think after a while, I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore, which is, you know, that's fine.
That's completely fair. And that's why, like, when I was going through those levels and, like, maybe you have to light some fires, like, wherever you are, they're going to have all the ingredients to make, like, I forget what it's called, like, ignifier or whatever the device
Ignifier,
was.
I think you got it,
yeah. So that's where, when I was doing that, I was like, I wish they had like a harder difficulty that maybe it didn't have that, and like you actually have to like really plan out those situations. Like it won't just have like an infinite ammo right before, like right beside, or like maybe like right before you're going on the mission.
Yeah.
Because that, like you said, like by the end, I didn't have to really like worry about it. Like the game this is the climax. It's gonna give me everything that I need to get through it.
Yeah, I'm really curious like where the second game will be with that in terms of like your basic tools, like your slingshot, which I'm sure you'll have that. Like, will it be an upgraded version? Are you going to upgrade that again? Are you going to upgrade that with new abilities? I wonder, or if they're just going to make it so you kind of have that first game's tool set again for the most part, and then like I'm sure there's new tools, new weapons.
I saw a crossbow.
Yeah, I saw a crossbow.
Poster.
That's one of them for sure. That's exciting because that'll probably be maybe lean to maybe more combat focus and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that. But yeah, again, then this level ends with what is a big emotional moment where once again Hugo has ran away. Amicia's chasing him, and to get to him, she has to kill a couple people on her way to save him. And you know what I loved about this is that the game like makes that a point in the story, where I feel like most games, you know, we're so desensitized to just killing people left, right, and center. But like that first kill, at least, Amicia is like just emotionally gutted having to do that.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I applaud any like game or story that like totally emphasizes that, especially for a character like this. Like, I think she's like 15 or 16 or something. Yeah. Like she's never really I don't know, like done too much other than just like slinging, I don't know, maybe some squirrels here and there, or
Just quite an
some
innocent
practice
person,
targets.
the title right there.
Yeah, exactly. Like very just like caring and like obviously not a murderer. So, but yeah, like the game emphasizes that so well. And also, I love when like you like it puts it in your hands. Like, okay, to progress through the story, like you have to do this, but like you have to pull the trigger here, and
Yeah,
then
true.
like you
Yeah.
really, I feel like you just experience that with the protagonist so much, I don't know, better than just like watching it through a cutscene. So yeah, that one, it totally left a mark on me. And I feel like the game overall, yeah, you're, you know, like you're not executing thousands of people throughout the game, but like you're definitely taking out quite a few people. And it
Mhm.
actually like talks about kind of how Amicia is changing, and like maybe like a little bit more desensitized to just how she tackles things. Maybe just the way that Lucas reacts to her, or how Hugo
Yeah.
reacts to her, and it's almost like a Dishonored thing, you know,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
the darker. I know like you're not really making too many choices here. It is a linear story, but still, like whenever the side characters kind of reacting to that
Mhm.
behavior, I love that as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain moments where you do have the option to kill someone or not, or save them,
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. And usually, if you want to save someone, it's not a matter of just running past them. It's usually like you have to do something extra to do it. So they make it that you actually have to work for it too, which I think is good. I think that is. I agree with what you said. There are some great scenes where they mention that, but I almost feel like there. This is maybe one of my criticisms of the game, is that I feel like it's a bit inconsistent at times, and sometimes I
that's
felt
fair.
like they're kind of glossing over the fact that Amicia in some ways has become a monster. She's killing tons of people, and of course, once again, that will vary depending on player. I think I generally did try and save people, but then there was moments near the end of the game where I was like, I gotta like no holds barred here. I'm taking out anyone in my path at this point. I'm not innocent Amicia anymore. And this is maybe getting a bit too much meta on it, but that's like something they're really pushing with the trailers in the sequel, is that she's like now realizing what's happened and is like what she's done, who she's become, and having to deal with it. So I'm curious what the evolution will be, because I almost feel like they like rolled it back, and of course that is a trailer, so it's like maybe that's
Yeah.
just snappy trailer dialogue and not actually what's going on. Um, so yeah, we'll see about that. I'm excited to revisit that later in the month when we're talking about that new game. But yeah, I think there are a few key moments that really stand out, and you're right, like a character like Lucas commenting on her, or just like it might not even be a comment, it might just be like a look they give her or something, based on what she's doing. Or Hugo is like at times really disgusted with what, like how easily she can kill people at some points too. So I think that's a very interesting part of the character that yeah, most games don't even bother trying to do something like that, and this game does it pretty successfully, although it could be a bit better.
And because they have so much attention to detail, like you don't even need a cutscene to get that reaction, like
Mm-hmm.
just from their like body language, like
Yeah,
just something will happen. You'll see a character like maybe flinch or just like I don't know, wince in a certain way, and
definitely.
yeah, I love all that stuff.
That sequence too, like that little boss fight, quote unquote, has like this element where you're having to knock the guy's armor off with like the weak spots, which I actually really liked. That I thought that was cool, and I was excited for the game to do that a bunch more with different kind of armor sets and things like
Yeah.
this. But I think it happens like 2 or 3 times in the whole game. That was something I was a bit disappointed by. I thought that was a fun way to mix up some of the gameplay, or add like some mini bosses on there. And if they overdid it, yeah, I think it would have been annoying. But
Yeah.
I could have used it a few more times. So I hope that's something they do in the sequel, because I kind of liked that.
Yeah, and like I didn't even realize like what you had to do for a little while there. Like I was kind of
Yeah,
stumped.
it's
I
a
was
bit
like, well, I was
confusing.
like, what's gonna happen here? He's just like dinging off his armor. Totally reminded me though of like Legend of Zelda, like Wind Waker, just like the way that there'd be like certain knights that you have to like take their armor off in order to
Right.
get rid of them. And yeah, it was a very, because it like felt arcade, like it's an arcadey type of like boss fight. I feel
Sure.
just like
Yeah.
removing the armor in that way, but it didn't really feel like that, other than like just the enjoyment that you get out of it. Like it's a fun way to tackle a boss, but it still felt like realistic for the situation to an
Hmm.
extent, I guess. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it's a good thing to add, because no matter where you are in the game, Amicia's like, movement and things like that are always quite limited, and are very grounded and real. Like you don't get a huge dash, or you don't get like a double jump, and things like that. So it's never too frenetic of a game. So to have like in that sequence, it's like, okay, we're just gonna make this a very small little arena, and that's what makes it so intense, is trying to line it up. But I gotta say as well, like when you die in this game, man, they have some like very vicious death animations and stuff like that. They don't
And you can't
stay-
pause. You can't like stop it. It's like, no, don't let it happen.
Yeah, and they do not like, they go through it quick. Like it's like a second, and then you're immediately like loading back in, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, man, especially against that guy with his giant like mace thing, right? I forget is it a mace or is it just like some plank? I forget what it was, but it's
I
some
think it's a giant
huge
mace.
blunt weapon that he's just
Yeah.
smashing Amicia with at a moment's notice.
It's so funny though, because like there'd be just moments in the game where like maybe I screwed up on the stealth, the alarm bell goes off, so it's like pause, restart chapter, or like not restart chapter, restart checkpoint. But like I said, like when the guy's like that close to you, it just won't let you pause, so you have to like go through this like gruesome death, and it just made it so much more intense, because it's not just like, oh, I got caught here. It's like, oh no, he's gonna get me, and like you said, it's very just visually intense, and like the audio effect too. It's like, oh, I actually just died here in a gruesome way.
Yeah. Moving along is we go into the church, we meet a character, but this is kind of when we get introduced to the rats of the world. They start burrowing out of the walls and stuff like that. I guess for anyone who hasn't played the game, the rats are afraid of daylight or torch fire, whatever it is. Any like sources of light really kind of gets rid of them. So you kind of have to make pathways of light and things like this. This is a huge part of the game. Obviously, this is like one of the main focuses of it. It fits in with that plague theme, but of course they're going like more fantastical with it, a little more, yeah, I guess just like really over the top in that way. What did you think about the just rats? I know that's like it's a very vague question to ask for what is just this thing that has tons of mechanics that flow off of it, but just overall, what do you think of it?
I absolutely loved it. It was it's such a big part of this game, and for me, I had such a fun time with it. Definitely, I think I was expecting it to be a little bit more grounded than what it ended up being, but like the fantastical elements of it completely worked, because it was fun to deal with. Like, like maybe it won't be the most realistic, but just going through it, I had so much fun like tackling those puzzles, or the way that you like utilize the rats later on in the story. So yeah, no, I loved it so much. Going into it just through like trailers, I knew that there was gonna be like a lot of rats. I didn't know to the full extent of like how it was gonna be such an integral game mechanic. So I was going into it like expecting some Dishonored like vibes with the rats, which it's kind of like that. Dishonored is like set like a kindergarten level compared to what this is.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it totally worked. And there's definitely some like goofy ways that the way that they move to the like through the light. But I think overall, like it was like so smooth. I never felt like I died in like a bullshit way through the game. Like maybe I like you're going through some light, and then maybe like in one little corner, like the rat just like got through and got you. I never really had those moments. If any time that did happen, I knew it was my own fault.
Sure. Yeah.
And yeah, they were terrifying, and I'm very scared and intrigued what they're gonna do with the second game.
Yeah, they're very creepy and well done. Just the quantity, the noise that they make, the little sound
noise
effects,
and the eyes.
God.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, those beady little eyes. I mean, yeah, dude. Like watching the trailers for the sequel, which shows like a gameplay sequence, it looks like a tsunami rolling through a town. Like they've evolved it to like it's almost like a water mechanic, like a wave of rats now, instead of like, I guess like these grounded bundles and stuff like, and then they do their little tornadoes and stuff like that. But yeah, I think this like is super well done, and it is something that it is very impressive. But I can also just like I'm very excited to see that improvement when I'm playing that second game, because there are some times when I think it is a bit janky, or a little rat will be like glitched out in a corner as like there's a tiny little patch of black, darkness that's like letting him in there, and then he'll just like evaporate.
Poofs. Yeah.
Kind of weird, yeah. So
I love the animation of them poofing. It was hilarious. I would just like get them into a wall and like corner them. They're just like poof.
it feels very satisfying, but it can be a bit goofy at times.
Yeah.
But I think it like works really well for the level design as well. Like obviously it's pretty simple from the get-go, where it's like, okay, I just got to stand on a table, but then the way they use it and like the various light mechanics, I think, are just really great and really well done and really responsive. And once again, just lends well to puzzles, lends well to stealth, all of that. It's just really well connected. So I really like those guys. Moving on, let's see, what is the next sequence? I guess our next sequence would be kind of traveling to Lorenzi's, who's like this alchemist who's going to be helping you out. And this is kind of a longer travel sequence. There's a lot of things that go on here. The one I wanted to highlight was, well, I guess a couple things. Like there's a sequence when you're, I guess, getting close to Lorenzi's, and there's just like thousands of pig bodies all lined up and stacked up. I think this is the first time you see like a large scale massacre, essentially, of like what the rats have done versus what like the townsfolk have done, things like that. But it is just absolutely disgusting. They like set those gross scenes very, very well. There's another one coming up too that we'll talk about. But yeah, I really like this sequence, and this is when we get introduced to Lucas as well, who I think is another really well-written character, and one that I did not expect to be like with you pretty much the whole game. But I was glad that he was, because I think he's a lot of fun, and he's very smart and knowledgeable as well with the potions and stuff. So that makes sense from a story perspective, that he's kind of the one that helps Amicia with, okay, how can we save Hugo? Okay, you go do it, but I'm like the brains behind the operation, that kind of thing. So a good team up there.
Yeah, man. Lucas, I mean, aside from Amicia and Hugo, Lucas was my favorite character throughout the entire thing, and I was pleasantly like shocked that he did make it through the whole thing. And going into the second game, he's gonna be there. I haven't watched the trailer. Did he show up in the trailers?
I think he's in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Probably like a story one or whatnot. But yeah, no, I love it. He was also like one of my favorite. Like, I feel like I just fell in love with like his voice. Like, he just had like such a very pleasant, like well-spoken little alchemist voice, and yeah, he was such a great character. But this whole sequence, yeah, like it I feel like it wasn't the nastiest that we've come across in the entire game, but up until that point, it was like, oh yeah, this is a dirty world that we're in, and like the plague is very much around, and yeah, it was. I mean, like throughout this whole game, all the travel sequences, I loved it all. I love just that checking the trail and the little shoelace express, and just, I don't know, the little piece of dialogue that Hugo and Amicia would have throughout it. I loved everything about it, because like just going through the world of this very, very beautiful, dark, grim world is it's really enough for me, I feel like, to enjoy it. But like the just personality that's coming out from the dialogue between the characters really was like the sprinkles and the cherry on top, including the whipped cream too. It was everything.
It's everything.
I loved it.
Yeah, there was that one moment where you have to sacrifice a pig to progress the level, and Hugo's really upset about that decision. And I really like that. They build that tension up, and there's a good like hopelessness to this scene as well, when the house is burning down and all that stuff. It just like, it really feels like all hope is lost, and obviously you do have like a next goal to go on to right away, and you're moving along pretty quickly. But I think it like, I mean, this game's already been pretty dire at this point, but this added just like that quest that you thought was going to be resolved when you got to this place, and now that's not the case, and you're kind of in limbo of like, what is our solution going to be moving ahead here? And you don't have a full-on game plan for a while after that, and you're just kind of traveling on with these three characters through the world.
And like what you just said there, I think that's another thing that just pleasantly surprised me going through the game, is like the goal isn't really clear as you're progressing through it. And I like when you're first trying to just escape that little village, and then like going to Lorenzi, like as I'm going along, like I was like puzzled. I'm like, I don't know what's going to be happening after I come to this character, and I feel exactly like what the characters are, and I think the game did a really good job at just I don't know, like giving you little bits of the story, or like not necessarily bits of that as well, but also like what the goal is going to be. It's not like you have the big boss that's introduced in like the very first cutscene. It's like, okay, I'm going to be interacting with this guy in the end. I love the way it happened, because there's definitely some twists and turns that go along. Just they happen along the way, and some are good, majority of them are very, very bad, but I don't know, it just really kept me on like the joystick too, because I didn't want to put it down, because I just wanted to like find out what was going to happen next.
Yeah, no, you mentioned that at the beginning, just like the length of chapters is like perfect, where you can do one in a sitting, and that's good. but I was always like compelled to like go, oh man, I'll
Yeah.
just do one more chapter tonight, that kind of thing. It gets you in that good way. This might be a good time to talk about, I guess the key mechanic here of you control Amicia, and you're getting obviously you have Hugo at the beginning, who you're having to take care of, but he also has certain abilities where you can crawl through small things, and you can throw him over a wall or something like that so that he can go open a door. Lucas gets in there too. He doesn't really have like a unique ability necessarily, right? He's kind of more just like, you can carry stuff with him like as a two-man team. But
He
then
gives you
that's like,
some new like alchemy recipes in the beginning,
right,
and then
yeah,
after
that
that,
kind of
his
stuff.
like usefulness is kind of gone.
Yeah. But then that's a big part of the game after that is that you're getting different companions throughout the journey. I really like how much they mix up like the party that you're traveling with. It's never just like, okay, we added a new guy to the party, let's go do
Yeah.
this mission. Like you'll specifically make plans of like, okay, it makes more sense for me to stay back at the castle, whereas these characters should go off and try and do this certain task.
Yeah.
But I like having these companions. I mean, we'll talk about all of them one by one, but just the concept of like these companion abilities where Melly can unlock doors and Roderick is like can do those stealth takedowns for you, that kind of stuff. I think it works really well for what I was mentioning of like having your different party makeups and what you're capable of doing at the time. And then it also just is a fun way to kind of do these duo mechanics. So I thought that was really well done and helps you feel even more bonded with those characters because you rely on them to do a lot of basic stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned in the non-spoiler section, like I fell in love with like all the characters that we came across. I really just grew attached to them, and like what you highlighted about like maybe not necessarily like we're all together on all these missions. It again, it just added to like that realistic feel of it because as you mentioned, like it makes more sense. Like maybe certain characters sticking back for a particular job. I also liked a lot of moments throughout I don't know, different levels or chapters. Something would happen that like maybe the party gets split up, like whoever's actually there. Maybe it's Lucas and Melly.
Melly,
That was
yeah.
her. Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe it's Lucas and Melly that like go off to the side, and then like you're like the party's just kind of split up in that sense. And I feel like the game does like a pretty damn good job at like balancing the characters and like spending time the side characters spending time with Amicia, and like I felt like I had adequate time with all the characters. And I like I said, like I liked them all, and I liked how different their little expertise and specialties, that was easy for me to say,
Yeah.
specialties are. And yeah, I think it was also interesting just hearing like kind of what their story is and like how they kind of got to the situation that they're at, and like what their kind of priority is, or like what their goal is, and just the whole bonding sequence. It felt very natural for me.
Yeah. Next up is like maybe my favorite section of the game. Favorite in that is just so grotesque, which is when you're traveling kind of beneath or along this aqueduct, or as Hugo says, aqueduct, right? Is how he says it with his little accent as well. But this is just the most grotesque thing ever, where it's not even like this is a rat area, but this is just like where there was a civil war happening. So there's just piles and piles of dead bodies and just pools of blood, and then the rats come along and it gets even nastier. But like just that scene, their reaction to seeing this kind of battlefield and having like the different walking animation they get of how they're having to like, oh god, step in like brains and bodies and stuff like that. Super disgusting scene, but very memorable. And I feel like that is like 5-10 years from now, like that's the scene I'll remember if I'm remembering anything from this game.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this is probably the section that had like the biggest imprint on me, because yeah, it just really highlighted like what like a medieval war site could like actually look like. You know, like just so many deaths, and like not in like pretty fashions. There's not like people pulling out bodies, like it's just stacks on stacks. And like you said, like when you actually have to like step over the bodies because you have like you can't get around them, like you have to go through there's just so many. Like as I'm going through it again, like it's a video game, but I'm just so immersed. I'm like I just, how long until I'm out of this sequence? Like there's so many bodies, there's so many rats. Like I feel like I just can't get out of it. And like our characters kind of like portrayed that really well. Like they seemed like they were just getting like mentally like broken down just being there. And yeah, it was absolutely disgusting. I liked as well how you could just kind of see like where you're going, like that you're
Yeah,
following the
true.
aqueduct, but it's still just like fuck, like mountains of bodies to get through. I like the puzzles through those sequences too.
Yeah.
Those were really fun. Again, you got Lucas there, and I was like on that mission. I was like, man, I'm loving this side character that it just like kept building on, multiplying as we went on through the story. Huge Lucas fan. I love that guy.
Love it. And there's also a very cute moment too in that scene somehow, where, as I mentioned, Hugo mispronounces aqueduct, and Amicia corrects him. I just thought that was like a very cute little moment that stood out to me. So, shout outs to
Yeah.
that.
I mean, you and I are the same, right? We got one older sister, so I felt like there was a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
wanted
like,
to bring that up at some point. Yeah, there's like some realism to it in that way, or it like feels like it's
yeah,
related to us as people.
100%. I never went through a plague with my sister, but I
No.
definitely was the annoying
I'll throw a
brother like
pandemic
Hugo
with her, I
was.
guess.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like they did a good job at like showing those natural like brother sister dynamics of like maybe the sister's just like being super impatient with like the younger brother who's just very curious and like doesn't like fully understand the way the world works, and also just like them getting frustrated with each other but also looking out for each other, and like at the end of the day like they're still family. So I think that's another like big reason why I was able to just like get totally immersed with it, because it's like, oh, okay, I have a sister here. I can kind of like totally see like the what would you call that, the parallels, I guess, to real world.
For sure. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think it's super well done. The pacing of it too, and just how it evolves over the course of the game. They'll like ebb and flow between being big fans of each other, wanting to work together, having cute scenes. You mentioned the flowers, which I always loved that. Like more than checking off a collectible on the list, I just wanted those scenes because you'd always get some cute little piece of dialogue where Hugo picks a flower, has a story behind it, gives it to her, kind of complimenting her. They even have a moment where Hugo's like, "I'll teach you about flowers if you teach me how to use the sling," and I like that line too. But oh my god, they're just such a sweet, cute little duo, those two.
That was the collectible that I was trying to find the most out of all the levels, because like it actually like
it's a great
like
reward.
100%. Like they just bond a little bit, like say a little thing, and like I love how Amicia actually has like the flower in her hair like going forward, and it's just like I'll be going through the level, it's like, oh my god, that's still there, that's so awesome. Like it actually, I feel like I picked up that collectible, it's not just like it's in like some imaginary inventory or like a collection screen or something like that.
Definitely. Yep. Let's take our next ad break here, and we're plugging along. We still got a lot of this game to talk about. Okay, we are back. So the next sequence is essentially when Hugo gets kidnapped, and then you get captured as well, and then you wake up in this bandit camp. I don't know about you, but this bandit camp was giving me major Fable vibes in its design. The tents, the wooden structures, the wooden walls around it, all this stuff, which, I mean, we've talked about this many times on the podcast. I just love those Fable bandit camps. So to have one of those kind of things, but just like a major high fidelity, like, hell yeah, count me in this. I thought this was great. I really liked this sequence. It was a very different kind of stealth sequence here, where you're not really dealing with rats, but you're more just cruising around these different tents and things like that. This is where you meet Melly, of course, and then her brother. I like this element too, where he's up there and you can like call out points where you want him to shoot, distractions and things like that. So I really liked this whole sequence, and I think isn't this kind of when we get introduced? Well, I guess maybe this is the second time we see that main villain, right? Because he was
Arthur,
in that intro
right?
sequence, right?
Yeah, he was the one that killed the father.
Yeah, Nicholas.
Nicholas, that's what it is, not
yeah,
Arthur.
I think that's what.
Yeah, Sir Nicholas. Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny. Like I didn't think of it at the time, but as soon as you said Fable, now I completely see the similarities.
My brain always goes back to Fable.
Maybe that's why I liked it a lot, because I was subconsciously just like remembered or reminded of those of those bandits in Fable. But yeah, no, I really like this. It also I feel like, yeah, like, okay, they're looking for Hugo for some reason, but here it's okay, like these bandits are actually willing to just like sell like this boy for whatever amount it was to the church that like I feel like it just ramped up like the importance of Hugo in those
Yeah.
moments. Obviously, I knew going forward like he is going to be a key part of the story, but
Yeah.
it really made it clear in that scene, and I loved how it opened, and because like you just felt so screwed, like how is she going to get out of the situation? I never thought that those like the corpse robbers, grave robbers, whatever you're calling them, would come back, and then they ended up being really, really just interesting, fascinating characters with like pretty interesting layers to them too. As we go along and we just learn a little bit more about them, like some of their like barriers and defenses go down. Specifically with Melly, I feel like because she's always like putting up like a really tough face.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, it was. I loved it. Again, like when you're kind of calling out to Arthur, it totally reminded me of like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, because that's when you like are forming like your creed, and then like that's like you'd have like a little prompt like that, and you would take out a guard. Totally got taken back to those
That's
moments.
amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess shortly after here is when you really, I feel like, form that party. I feel like when you get hooked up with Melly is when it feels like a team, a roster that you're kind of building up, and then plus you go to the castle, and that becomes kind of your home base for the rest of the game. Like you're kind of setting out from here. Oftentimes they skip that travel sequence, between a place, so you're not having to go the whole way, but you're always kind of coming back here, and you'll just build up your home here as well as like the one safe place, because there's this whole weird like I don't know what you'd want to call it, but just like what would you call that huge like courtyard area? I guess
it's like an ancient defense system for for rats.
Right? Yeah, it's
all
like
the braziers.
It's very strange, very weird the way it's designed, but I love the look of that castle overall, and I really like that home base, and kind of having your team, your family, your makeshift family, all kind of set up there.
Yeah. That little courtyard, that's another thing that completely made me think of like Legend of Zelda, where it's like this one room, like ancient, you're kind of like awakening for the defenses or whatnot.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it's funny too, because at the end of that like escape mission, when you like lead into like the castle sequence, you're running away, like that's where like Melly and Arthur kind of, or no, Arthur's gone at that point, but Melly's saying that Lucas said that he's like rich, so that like that's going to be the reward there.
Right.
I like that story element, how that happened, but like also just like when you run off and you like meet up with Lucas, and they're just like talking. It's just like this group, like they're not that old. It's pretty much just like a group of kids. I was just like grinning ear to ear. It's like, this is so fun. Like I love my little entourage right here, and they all had their own little personalities. But yeah, getting to the castle too. I loved all of that.
The lightning sequence is pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's sick, and that's again something that I've done before. You're like returning to like the family home, or you're returning to like some sort of like castle thing before. But anytime that happens, I'm like all giddy, especially anytime that you're like getting into something that no one's been there for a long time, and then you make it like your home base, and so that was a awesome sequence for me. And I liked all the chapters that you're in that little castle, and just navigating and exploring the different areas of it.
Yeah. And I think this is kind of when the game ramps up Hugo's condition being in a much worse place, where I feel like now is when you start to see like the black veins and things like that kind of taking place, or he's like just passed out for an amount of time, things like that. And I like this element to it, because I think it adds just I guess it just adds like the sensation that you got to like hurry up and complete your task,
Right.
You don't have much time to do this kind of thing, so it adds some urgency to the story. So I like it in that way. But once again, that hopelessness is still kind of there, where like Lucas has some ideas and things like that, but even his ideas are like, okay, this is going to slow it, but it's like not really going to cure this thing, because I don't really know exactly what's going on there. So yeah, I like that stuff to it. And I think Hugo, as the game goes on, because of this, he becomes more insufferable, but it's like in a well done way. You're going to get less of those sweet scenes between them. I think that's maybe more like the first half of the game is when you're getting that bonding, and then from here on, it's almost like the division between them is building in a way. You still get some sweet scenes in there, but he's just kind of losing it a bit too, and he's so young that he can't really like vocalize exactly what's going on exactly. And I mean, no one can.
Right.
It's like a unique virus that only he has, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. It it's also something that like I was a little bit confused on. Like overall was just like how the plague worked. Like I feel
Yeah.
like I was kind of not in the clear on like why he was special and like why he was reacting differently than like everyone that's just dying because of the bite. I thought he was bitten at one like early on in the story, but turns out he wasn't. He was just like the original carrier of the. Did we find what it was? It's like
Yeah.
the amygdala or something like that.
Yeah, I
Oh,
forget exactly what the science of it was, but I think you're right. It was during that scene when you're kind of in that crypt that was like behind the family home, right? Like when you go back there
yeah.
and you're kind of finding out about this, that it like ran in the bloodline. And I forget exactly why Hugo was the one that like reactivated it. It was something about like the son being born to like this I forget. Yeah, I forget
Yeah.
exactly why it was him, but it was just like this long prophecy that was kind of laying dormant, I think, for a few generations, and then with him is when it kind of came to light through that way. So
Yeah.
yeah, I felt like I was understanding it in the moment, but like it's been a couple months now, and I feel like I'm a little less, I'm a little more foggy on kind of the logistics of it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Moving on here. Next up is kind of when you're heading off to like this is when they set up that book. I forget the name of the sanguine or something. The sanguine book or something
Oh
like whatever they call
yeah.
it, right?
It had a sweet name and a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful cover for it too. I
Yeah,
forget what it's
very
called.
very cool looking book. But this is kind of your next goal is to go get this book that has all the answers you need. Kind of a classic trope in that way. And it's at the university town, whatever you want to call it. I really liked this kind of set. Like even when you first are getting there, just like when you're zoomed out from afar, just approaching, it just looks so cool. Like the design of it
Oh
is
yeah.
very intriguing. But I love it even when you're inside all these different libraries and stuff like that. All of that stuff really works for me. I really like this sequence as well.
The Sanguinus Itinera, or however you say that.
There
But
you go.
the
Love it.
Sanguinus, I love that part of it. I
Mhm.
love this sequence so much. I think it really I really felt like the urgency of the situation.
Yeah.
Like these threats that are here with me are looking for the object that I'm looking for. So and just like that one character, I don't even know if he had a name, but like that one like bishop guy who's not like the main one, but he was kind of like leading the search for the Sanguinus.
Right. Right.
Um, like cause he's in the cutscenes and then he's also like a guard that you're kind of like avoiding, and I thought that was a fun dynamic. And yeah, like I really felt like I had to get to that book first, and even when you get there with
Roderick. Yeah.
Roderick,
Yeah.
um, uh, like when you're doing the puzzle to like get it, like I felt like, oh my god, like I got to do this quick and then like get out of it. And the game didn't like bullshit me. It's not like, oh yeah, I was looking for the puzzle for so long and like we just got out scot free. Like they actually were just there as soon as you get the book.
Hmm.
So I love this whole sequence.
Yeah, and I think too, even like when you're going into the university and you're just through the in the town part of the outside, the surrounding town, you kind of get a reveal there that's pretty disgusting that the guards are just allowing the rats to kill the population, like they're actively just letting that
Yeah.
happen and they're encouraging it. They're sicking the rats on people, which is just so messed up, and I think it adds to that villainy of it too. And obviously it's all kind of tied into what is that like main guy's name? Vitalis, is that what that guy's name is? Like the
Yeah,
main
I
like
have
Pope
it.
looking dude.
It is Vitalis Benevant with a couple accents in there.
Benevent, love it. Yeah, very fun name
Vitalis
in this.
Vitalis Benevant.
Benevent. But yeah, like that was a very just disgusting reveal that added kind of a layer to it, and I think that's almost when I had a bit of a shift too, where as a player I was like, I am more down for killing these guards now. Like this is so
Yeah.
messed up what they're doing that like I'm more okay with this, which I think is a like a good storytelling thing for them to do to make those decisions harder on you. I think for the most part you're they're kind of choosing whether or not you're killing a specific character, but like we said, like there is a few times when you do have a choice. You can leave someone, you can stealth around them, or you can like go out of your way to save them. Oh, actually, I guess we should ask that too. Like earlier on, I think it's during the aqueduct sequence, maybe when you're going to Lorenzi's still, but there's a guard like at the end of a hallway, and you have the option to save him by like throwing your ignifier
Oh yeah,
at that
yeah.
torch. Did you save that guy, or did you leave him to die? It's like that moment where you're walking forward, right, and you have a torch, so you're pushing the rats like into him, kind of.
Oh, I definitely killed him. Yeah, I 100%. Yeah, 100%. I was trying to remember exactly what it was. I like didn't realize that you could have done it without it. I was just like, well, I gotta.
Yeah, you can like hang the torch up on the wall, light it. There's a torch thing like right by his head, so you can light that up.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, no, I didn't catch that, and it's funny too because like even Hugo is like don't do it. Like essentially, he's like all stressful,
and he's pleading, man. He is pleading, yeah.
And like I was just like, no, I gotta like who knows this guy? I can't trust this guy. He's probably gonna kill me. So I'm just gonna. I gotta look out for my brother here. I gotta save him.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, and I guess so. When we're in the universities, I feel like when they really roll out more information on Vitalis, also known as the Grand Inquisitor, where he's getting infusions, kind of related to information from that book, right? Which is making him all tweaking out and doing some stuff that we'll talk about later on. Some crazy stuff happens there, but yeah, the character of Roderick. What do you think about him? You a fan?
I felt like he was very like plain until you get that like one quick moment with like the blacksmith area where like he kind of breaks down and like Amicia has that great line that she delivers for him of just like having like hope to like look forward to, and it's like
right.
Yeah, things have happened in the past, but don't just like forget about those moments. I don't know. It made it really interesting. He perishes shortly after that moment. I think out of everyone, I was totally fine with like him dying. Maybe Arthur too, because he was just not really a part of the main crew for a long time.
Well, Roderick, he lives for a while, right? He dies like near the end of the game, right?
Yeah, I was talking about like the moment like when you find the blacksmith. It's like right before that sequence.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, like I don't know. I felt like I liked him. I liked the dialogue that Amicia had with him. And also just like how Hugo was just like, oh, I like you're so strong, like all these things, you know. And also just like Roderick. I mean, like once Hugo's popping off with the rat powers, he's like, you're the strongest out of all of us. But I don't know. I liked the way all of our characters like interact with him. But yeah, I don't know. I was probably the least attached to that character, other than Arthur, in our posse.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I still liked him, but yeah, I think if I had to make a tier list, I'd probably put him like near the bottom of it if we're looking at our main characters at least. But I like his ability to just fucking knock enemies out. It's almost like a bit comedic in a way because it's like so over the top, but I like it because of that. You can also, knock out doors that are jammed too with that because he's just super strong. So I thought it was funny because he seemed like just a regular dude, but then he just like had super strength essentially. Like they really dialed up his strength level, I feel like.
And like anytime he would just like knock down a door, I'm like, that fucking shoulder of his is gonna just like get destroyed. Just not a good door kicking technique. Just
he's got bruises on bruises on his arms for sure after all that stuff.
Yeah, he's tough as nails, that guy.
Okay, let's see what happens. Yeah, I guess next you get back to the castle, and then it's kind of like the snow starts rolling in, which I love the look of that snow, very beautiful. Yeah. But then this is interesting to me. I did not expect this, which was that there's like a 3-week time skip. You just jump forward in time. We'll have another one of these later on as well. But yeah, how did you feel about that? Because I was very much expecting this to be like one straight shot from the beginning. The whole game would take place over the course of like a week or two in game time, but really it takes like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months because of some of these time jumps in here.
Yeah, I was completely shocked about that because this is after Hugo gets taken, is it?
Yeah, Hugo's gone at this point, I believe. Right?
Yeah. So yeah, Hugo's gone, and it was almost like like Infinity War Endgame moment where I'm like, holy shit, like that's a significant jump. I know it's not 5 years here, but still 3 weeks. Like that's a long time of just not having Hugo, and like Hugo been separated.
Verifying my notes, I think he actually runs off like next chapter, so he is back at this point. You did.
Okay.
Well, because he never came to the university at all, right? Like he was just not in that sequence, right?
No, yeah,
He just
wasn't
stayed
there.
back. Yeah.
It was.
So
It
he's
was.
still
Yeah.
there, but then after more things are happening, he's not getting saved. Then he runs off a little bit later. Anyway, quick
Yeah.
correction, but yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, because I'm excited to talk about that whole disappearance of Hugo
Mm-hmm.
moment. But yeah, no, just for the overall like time skip, I wasn't expecting it. I liked it a lot because, like you said, like you get like that season change, and even like Amicia is wearing like I think she's got like a heavier coat on now. I always appreciate when our protagonist gets like a good wardrobe change to fit
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
climate. So yeah, I love that whole stuff, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's see what's up next here. So yeah, I think the next, maybe one of the next sequences is like the plan to go back to your home, right? I think that's kind of something that's happening next, which is let me double check my notes on that. I think that might be the next sequence, right? But yeah, because you go back and things have changed now, because the rats have like gone through here. I had a
Yeah.
couple questions about this. I mean, there like your father's body is still there unaffected, right? But the thing that was because that somewhat makes sense to me, I guess, because there's like a bloodline thing, even though of course Amicia will get messed up by rats. So I'm a
Yeah.
little bit confused there. But the thing that confused me more so was that like there's a few servant people, assistant, hired hands, whatever you want to call them, that like worked for the family in this house. And you'll go through and like their bodies are unaffected and the rats are there, like they're in the room, but they're
Yeah.
not eating those bodies. And I was curious like why that is. I feel like that was just something I completely missed and there wasn't a line of dialogue that I remember that kind of gave me information as to why that was happening.
I like completely forgot about that moment because like until now actually because yeah, like when that's going on I was expecting like an explanation. I don't know, could you theory craft that like maybe it's just because they like are attendants of the family or I don't know. Like I have no
Yeah.
idea why they wouldn't have been affected, and there was unfortunately no like clear explanation for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not too sure. Maybe it was because they've been there long enough. Maybe the rats don't care about like older bodies. They want fresh meat, fresh off the menu, that kind of thing. Maybe that's something to do with it.
Maybe. I don't
I
know.
also think too, like this is, after that time skip, things have kind of changed for Amicia, where she shows a lot less. She really shows no pity for any of these characters anymore. There's a couple people who at this point in the game are begging for their lives, but like the only way you can progress is by letting them die. Whether it's probably usually knocking out a source of fire to let the rats come get them, rather than like hitting them with a stone in the head or something like that. But yeah, I feel like this is when Amicia really went off the deep end, and it's for it's like a couple reasons. It's because of what's happened so far, but then it's also when Hugo goes missing, when he like runs into that tunnel and Amicia is following him, and then she passes out, and then that's when Hugo and her are separated for a little bit
Yeah.
in the game. Yeah.
That moment too, like when Hugo leaves, that was actually probably like my least favorite part of the game because
Okay.
unfortunately for me it wasn't clear like what was happening, so I just assumed it was like a dream sequence. So
Yeah.
then like
Okay.
after that, like when you're playing as Hugo, I just kind of was, I'm not gonna say checked out of it, but I was just like not really taking it seriously because I'm like, okay, there's gonna be a moment when they just like come back like to life or something, and then I don't know, Hugo and Amicia is gonna be together, but it just didn't happen. And then I was like, oh, maybe this is actually the case, but like, why did Amicia like go on that like super psychedelic trip? Like I was just totally like almost like behind, because I was just like caught up on like the logistics of
Mm-hmm.
how it was happening. So again, like that was just kind of my own like experience with it. Like maybe if I go back and redo it, like I'll like it a lot more. Just because like yeah, these rats are very fantastical, and like just the whole mechanics, the way the world works. Like there's alchemy, so okay, some magical stuff, but other than that, it seems pretty grounded up until that point. So like when she was just like tripping out, I'm like, yeah, this is a very obvious dream sequence, but that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the case. And then when we go through like a whole chapter with Hugo, when we go back to Amicia, I was like still kind of expecting it to like not actually be the case. And then yeah, no, Hugo's like chain was actually gone, his little like medallion. It was like, oh, okay. And unfortunately it didn't have the same effect that it could have for me.
Okay.
So yeah, that was like the only period of the game that I kind of had that thought, but it's a pretty significant moment like in the story. And unfortunately I was just kind of I don't know, frazzled in the brain as I was going through it.
I think that's a totally fair perspective. I think I felt pretty similarly. The one part that I did really enjoy about that is that Hugo, like while he's running, is just grilling Amicia about hiding the information of their mother still being alive. Because I think it's like right before that when Amicia, I guess, got confirmed about that. Yeah, so I thought that was like a pretty interesting part to it, and once again added some good tension between the two characters. But yeah, at that point, it's like it is really off the deep end, so it almost feels less grounded. Like if that similar fight had happened like earlier in the game or something, I think it would have just hit a lot differently than when it did come. Yeah, and then as you mentioned, like we kind of fade to black there, and then we wake up, and now you're playing as Hugo, which, yeah, from a gameplay perspective, I really liked this, just to like do something different. I didn't, once again, just unexpected. I did not think we'd be playing anyone other than Amicia in here. Yeah, I just liked his stealth sequence. It's very silly, where you're running under little tables and going through cupboards and stuff like this. But yeah, I liked this sequence. And this is when he finds Beatrice, and she's still alive, obviously. And then she teaches him how to use the control the rats himself. So this is obviously a big part of the rest of the game, where Hugo has the ability to sick rats on people. He's no longer getting killed by them. And it's a very much like one of those classic, like I feel like a lot of superheroes have this, where if they overuse their power, they like pass out and stuff like that. He has the same kind of thing too. Or if he uses it overboard, he will pass out, which you could say is like a plot device, which they can use to just have him pass out at convenient times and not be too powerful or something. But I think it worked for me. But what did you think about like that twist, that he has the ability to control the rats, and his bloodline powers that we had been kind of explained to now, and now we know like the implications of what that actually means if he learned how to control it, which the mom knew the whole time what was potentially able to be done.
Yeah, so like as I mentioned, I was kind of like put off about this whole dream sequence. I was
Yeah.
not taking it seriously, but that moment when like the first time that he actually like controls the rats, and the mom is like guiding him in a sense, because he's having like that like mental break, like he's he's like totally freaking out, his head's aching, and then you just have Beatrice like kind of pushing him on, like just like succumb to it, like go beyond like the threshold. At the time, I had no idea what this threshold thing was meaning. So as soon as like he actually was able to control the powers, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is what they were talking about. I thought that was very, very well done, honestly, because yeah, just like the mother like helping the son get through this moment, and the son's able to like use it to save both of them. And I don't know if I was just like using the powers really poorly at the time, but I felt like I really had to like go slowly like through like pushing like the rats back, and like balancing that, because like you push them in a direction, but like if you let go, like they will still eat you at that point.
Right. Okay.
You're not fully immune to them. And yeah, like I think for the tail end of that sequence, I liked it a lot. But like even before then, I did like all this the stealth elements of having like a smaller character that's a lot more. He doesn't have a sling up until that point. Later on, I would say he's a lot more OP than what Amicia is. But
Sure. Yeah.
at that time, he was a lot more vulnerable. And I always like when games do that. It reminds me of like Ratchet and Clank when you swap out to Clank for a little bit. So yeah, I like that like superhero moment, essentially,
Yeah.
like when he gets his powers.
And then, at this point of the story is when there's another time jump. This one's a little bit longer. It's like a month long, I think, this time. And so, yeah, I think it's almost left up to the player for a little bit of like, okay, what the hell happened in this time? Because you're back with Amicia at this point. So you're like, okay, well, where is Hugo? What is Hugo up to? And this is a very emotional scene. There's also a very intense boss fight that happens here. But Arthur is killed during this sequence, and then you also have that final like fight with Nicholas, right? Saint, what was his name? Saint, was it Saint?
Sir Nicholas.
Sir, not Saint. Sir Nicholas.
I don't think he's a
Saint
saint.
Nicholas is someone else that we know well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a like long, like arduous fight scene against him with all the fires and all of that. I think it's pretty interesting. Maybe it's a little bit longer than it needs to be, but I think it's totally fine. But yeah, a lot of emotional stuff going on here. And, even just like Hugo strolling in with the Inquisitor, and he's just like, not listening to reason at that point, that any relationship he had with Amicia seems to be severed at that point. So pretty
Yeah.
devastating scene. But yeah, I think all of it I thought was like very well done here.
His new gear looked awesome. I like his new garbs that he had. Sweet aesthetic. But yeah, no, that was a really intense moment. You have, the character Hugo to like not responding at all to his sister and just being this like super threat, tied up with Mr. Nicholas. I almost said Saint Nicholas there again. Got Christmas on the brain.
Yeah, exactly. It's coming up.
So yeah, with Sir Nicholas, and I liked when she was able to get through to him. I figured that was gonna happen, but still, it worked for me. And then the ensuing like boss fight that happened, and it was really intense because it's pretty chaotic. It took me a couple tries to just like figure out like what I had to do. But like once I got that down, I don't think it was too challenging. I agree, like maybe it was a little bit longer than it needed to be. But I don't know. I feel like that character, especially because he like executed your father, like it worked for me that it was longer because it was a lot more meaningful of a death. And God, what a death it was! All the rats just eating him alive.
Yeah, his fire sword. Oh my God, that guy's a real badass.
Yeah, and like because you think you have him at that one time. At least I did. It was definitely easy, but I'm still like, okay, I got him. Look at that, and then he just like ignites his fire sword, and it was.
Yeah.
What a badass.
That maybe is why it felt longer, is because I definitely died a couple times. Like a tricky boss fight, you got to be pretty precise.
Same, yeah.
So I guess moving on here, like we're pretty much right into the ending of the game, where the rest of the crew are traveling back to the university now. Along the way, Roderick dies valiantly pushing a cart to save the rest of them. So I thought that was like a well done moment. It was sad to see him go, even if he wasn't like our favorite characters by any means. We still spent a lot of good time with him, and he's a very critical character, very useful. And he, dies sacrificing himself to help you and the crew get along to the next area. So shout outs to Roderick there. Anything before because obviously there's like the big final fight with the Grand Inquisitor, but anything kind of before that?
I mean that section actually took me a few tries just because I kept like
It's hard,
missing.
man.
I kept missing one of
God.
the guards that like came up, and then
On the staircase part specifically?
Yeah, specifically
Oh my
the
God, the
staircase
headshot,
part.
getting the headshot there is so hard. Yeah.
And then I didn't notice that there was gonna be two guards coming from like the rear in that moment, so I'm like facing the one way, and then I turn around and the guy just fucking bops me in the head. And then it like takes you, it's not like very far back, but because Roderick has like push the cart, it takes a little bit longer to like redo that scene, and it took me at least 3 tries, so I was definitely ready to be done that sequence by the end of it. And unfortunately it led to our companion's death, but I think it was I was attached to the character enough, not my favorite, but because he died in a heroic manner, it made it a lot more meaningful, I would say, overall. So yeah, I liked it. Something I didn't really mention earlier, which is a big part of the game actually, is like the stealth mechanics with like another companion. Now it's not like it's not necessarily like Fallout or something where you have like a follower that could like raise an alarm or something like without you. Right. But I like the usage of it, especially like if there was. Because like you do move slower like with Hugo. I like how there's moments when you had to like kind of leave him behind, like specifically like when you're with Beatrice and him in the earlier stages. You have to like go do something and then tell them when it's safe. I liked all that stuff. I also just liked overall like the movement and mechanics of like you holding Hugo, and like just like you can't go as I said, like you can't go as fast as you would without him, but like he's the VIP. Like you got to make sure that like whatever you're doing, and I love that moment again with the Beatrice scene where like you hop over a wall by yourself, and then she's like, you can't do that, you can't leave him behind. It's like from that point on you do it, but it's nice because it's almost like our character learned along the way how to kind of like deal with Hugo, and I loved all of that stuff. And again, just like moving around with him, anytime like you have like a torch, like he would like go in really close with you. All of that detail, fantastic for me. I loved it so much. And even if you're with like Lucas and you had like a torch, like he would come over and like cuddle with you. I just loved how our side characters would interact as we're playing the game, and I just wanted to quickly mention that before I forgot.
No, that's a great point, because I feel like that's something that for many years, like it was just known thing that like, escort missions in games suck. Like I hate having to carry this NPC around, but I feel like this game does a really great job of that, where I really maybe only had a couple times where I felt like, God damn it, Lucas, you just fucking ran into those rats, and now I got to restart my save.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like they would stay in a spot that is logical. They'd stay close enough to you, and then if you're like going to push a cart or something like that, like he'd be right there to join you in doing that task. And yeah, you're right. Like it is an extra wide kind of character if you think about it, and having Amicia and Hugo holding hands next to each other. But it works really well even if you're whipping your camera around. Like they'll turn around on a dime in a way that doesn't feel janky like it very easily could have. So yeah, I just think like all the animations and all that stuff is fantastic, which of course is very crucial considering how beautiful this game looks. If it had janky animations, that would really take you out of it.
Oh, 100%. And like one last thing I'll add on to that of just like your movement with the character. I loved so much too, like the moments when I think it happened early on, like when you do see like all those corpses and deaths, and like Hugo's just so like hurt by it, and then you like just like carry him for like a little while. It's not long, but like it I feel like it goes a long way to just like have those moments of, yeah, it's very, I would totally picture that being the case, like just like a 7 or 8 year old or whatever, like just you know, you got to like carry him, and you move very slow with it, but it's necessary. And it happens a couple of times, and for me I really liked it.
Going into that final battle against the Grand Inquisitor Vitalis there, whatever we decided his name was.
Benevent.
So, you know, we also kind of glaze over this, but like sometimes the rats will go into like tornado mode, which is very over the top. You know, we're really deep in the supernatural stuff. I feel like we're so deep in it that like it totally felt normal for me at that point. Like I feel like that could have felt very cheesy, but it didn't. So congrats on that. But yeah, this final battle, like this is more rats than ever. We got 2 types of rats. He's making like giant rat pillars and dropping them on you. This fight took me a good few attempts. It was a very tricky one. I feel like I had to be pretty precise. And you almost need to know what is coming next in the fight to like be in the right spot and have the right equipment and stuff like that locked and loaded and ready to move on a dime. But I found it to be pretty satisfying and something different from the rest of the game, even if it is maybe a bit over the top. I think it worked for me. What did you think of this final boss fight?
Yeah, I completely agree. I felt like it was one that was challenging enough. It wasn't like to a level where I had to come back like the next night or anything that. But I felt satisfied by the end of it. Because like even like as it opens, like you're in this like uncorrupted area, and then there's the good rats all around you, and then obviously like the white albino rats that are all the bad ones, which is our enemy. And as the fight starts, like if you don't do anything and you just die, which happened to me, the game will like prompt you to like hold sprint or something, and I'm like, where am I supposed to go? Like there's rats everywhere. I didn't realize that like the rats were on my side until afterwards, and then that's when I was actually like able to start the fight for real. But yeah, definitely multiple stages of it, like maybe just get bopped. There was one where like I almost had him, but then there was like a tornado of rats coming behind me, and I didn't think that it was like gonna grab me in that way. And then also just like you do have to do it in a certain order for that last big kaboom attack. But yeah, I liked it a lot. It's funny too because like the fights, like the cutscene kind of happens and then the fight kind of starts, and I was just thinking, I'm like, why didn't you just like whip him with the slingshot? I'm glad that was actually how you kind of like brought him down, is with the slingshot in the head. Because I'm like, I've been doming guys all like, come on, this guy's so fragile, just one shot and I'm good. And I'm glad that was the case, that we took him out that way.
What did you think of him as a villain?
He was creepy, definitely.
Creepy,
Yeah.
Even as a line, he's like, "I've watched you grow up" and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my god, this guy's
and like
weird.
the wheelchair aspect, and like this like medieval, like I don't know, like medicine that's kind of going on with him. How they're like injecting him with that stuff.
Like big head. He's kind of got like a little bit of MODOK in him, doesn't he? Hey?
Yeah, his little. I could definitely see it. Fan cast this guy as MODOK. Crossover, but yeah, no, I thought he worked. I'm very glad that it was like I think it's a great villain for just this like one contained story. I don't need him to like, oh, I'm back and I'm even sicker and like more stronger than last time. Like I don't need that at all. Completely fine with him being killed off here. And I love that moment too, where he's like an offshoot of like the Vatican or whatever it is. and like it seems like they still kind of have like that hierarchy, but then like there's that they had that dialogue when like the one guy was like trying to like shut them down, and then like that was kind of like the pushing moment. It's like, okay, now they're really like going off in their own direction, kind of like how like Hydra in like Captain America kind of
Sure.
just like became its own thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I like that happened, because again it did make it they have like their super righteous plan, but they are definitely nefarious and have their own like sinister plans. And yeah, I think it worked really well for what the game was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they dialed up that evilness in a way that like it's twofold, right? Where it's like just him as he was, but then also the fact that he's injecting his body with like this fucked up experimental
Yeah.
juice that obviously that like tips him over into like fully evil. But we talked about how like the guards had orders to sick the rats out on like the public, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
that order would have come from him. So I think that it's a I think like he's a pretty well written villain in that way. He is definitely like way on the evil side, and he's not like dynamic in that way. And there's really no like any element of sympathy to it. But I think it works too, where like him and Nicholas, I think, are a good like combo of
Yeah.
villains in the game. Where Nicholas is maybe more of an immediate threat. He's a bit more intimidating with his armor and his weapons and stuff like that, and he's more forward facing in the story, whereas the Grand Inquisitor is kind of more lurking in the shadows, and he's building up to something, but you don't know what. But you also don't really, you just don't know too much about him for most of the game. It's really not until like later on, when you are deeper in the game, that you realize all that he's doing. And I feel like that's something that on a second playthrough of the game, I would really like to see how I'd feel about that. Just knowing like, okay, these decisions were directly because of like his choices and things like that. So I think it'd be pretty good. But I think you're right. I'm glad he got killed off in the end, because I'm ready to go a different direction. But I think he was like pretty successful. Not an all-time great villain by any means, but like, pretty solid as far as like a video game villain in terms of the writing there and the visuals of him. Trying to become a god, he's in a very weird and disgusting, grotesque way, but that's the way
Yeah.
that worked for him. So,
I like that spin too, how he had like his own kind of rats, and even like just as Hugo and Amicia like are coming across it, and they're like because like at that point like Hugo's like he like talks to the rats sort of, and like they are kind of like his friends
mm-hmm.
from that point on, which is just kind of funny, because they were like so evil, they killed so many people like up until that point, but now there's just, I don't know, I guess they're friendly. But like just how Hugo wasn't able to like kind of even like commune with these new like variants of them, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know, it made it not god mode for our characters,
Mm-hmm.
having
Mm-hmm.
these rats that won't react to them, and just like the overall look too, like it was very obvious to see which rats are the good rats or the
Yeah,
whatnot.
good point. Yeah.
But yeah, like with the Grand Inquisitor, I completely agree that he had just maybe too chaotic, like too evil, like no
Sure.
redeeming factors at all. But I again, at the end of the day, I think it works for what this overall story is, because it's almost like the type of story that you don't really need a guy like this. Like it's just like the rats alone are like a big threat.
Good
Now,
point. Yeah.
like having like the change at the end where like Hugo is able to like commune with the rats. I don't know, maybe he could have been like a new villain or something, but I'm glad it didn't go that case. Someone's got to die. Someone's got to take the
Mm-hmm.
fall here, and I don't think Sir Nicholas would have been like
Mm-hmm.
enough of a satisfying end to the story. Because
Oh
like when
yeah.
this guy
Yeah.
died, I was happy. It's like, okay, mission accomplished here.
Mm-hmm.
The
Absolutely.
world's not saved by any means. There's still like a huge plague everywhere, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's take our last ad break, and then we'll get into that epilogue sequence. We are back. Chapter 17 is the game's epilogue, where all is bright and dandy in the world. The rats are gone for the most part, and you're kind of getting tying up some characters. You're back in your that kind of hometown, walking around with Hugo and Amicia again. A very sweet scene. I like how long the epilogue is. It's not super long by any means, but it's enough. It's substantial enough. A lot of
It's
games
not
might just
rushing
have
through it.
yeah, a lot of games might just have like a cutscene that's like 2 minutes long, kind of explaining what happens afterwards and be gone with it. But I like that you get to play through this a little bit. You get to have a moment to breathe and just kind of enjoy your final moments with the game. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot we can talk about here. One is that your kind of crew that you're with at the end is, of course, Amicia, Hugo, Beatrice is with you as she's still alive and well at this point, and Lucas. Lucas is still paired up with you as well because yeah, where else does he have to go anymore? He's very close with you now, and they're trying to heal Beatrice, who's not doing so well at this point. She's kind of sick in the back. I got to say, I love this moment in the, I guess the caravan, the wagon, whatever it is, where Amicia and Hugo are just kind of talking, and they have like a little tickle fight. Oh, just so cute, so wholesome.
Totally.
And then I guess also worth noting that Melly is gone. I can't remember if there's a line that says where she is, but she's not dead by any means, but she's just not with the crew. So maybe we could talk about if she'll be in the sequel or something like that. But yeah, what did you think of this epilogue overall?
I loved it. I loved it so much. Going into chapter 16, like I don't know why, but I just assumed there was like two more chapters to the story. I'm like, okay, I know we're like ramping up to like the big fight, but I still feel like there'll be a little bit more after that. Like we rolled credits and I was like, oh, okay, it was just chapter 16. There you go. But I was pleasantly surprised that we had that epilogue because it would have just ended so abruptly, really. Like you kill the main villain and then it just like rolls to credits and there's like no satisfying really end to it. Here you get to see like kind of what life's like when the rats and the plague kind of like, you know, just go away, at least in this area. And it just felt like very positive and hopeful, you know, like we did lose a lot of people along the way, but like Beatrice is still alive. My favorite side character Lucas is with the crew, so I was just super overjoyed. And then yeah, you have just like the brother and sister just being like the best form of like siblings in that moment where they're just loving each other and having a good time. And like I was very, very happy because like everything story wise that those characters went through, me the player went through going through it again. Like I felt like I earned like this moment with them, and I felt like the characters deserved it for everything that they went through. So I thought it was such like a heartwarming and touching end to a very grim, dark tale. And again, too, just knowing how close we are to the sequel, I'm like, oh, like I'm so glad I didn't beat this in 2019. You know, it's like, oh, I just want more of this world and story. So it's awesome. You know, like we're within a month until this one comes out, the sequel.
Yeah, let me look up the exact date.
I think it's October something, so I can't wait for that one. And
October 18th.
Yeah, it's just what happened. October 18th. There you go. But yeah, for the epilogue, I loved it. I liked what you highlighted too, how it didn't feel like it didn't feel too short or anything like an epilogue could have been. I like how it was kind of slow. Like there was even that one like sling caravan game, whatever it was. So all that stuff was great.
Yeah, so and then the game kind of ends too by zooming the camera out, and you see that the caravan is going towards what looks like the coast, and there's even, I think we see some ships. I forget, is there an island? Do you see like land out in the water?
I just remember
just
ships.
Boats? Yeah, I think it's just the boats. So kind of signaling that you're probably going to jump on these boats and head off to a new place, which would be the setting of the second game, which I think is the case based on the trailers. So yeah, I don't think you've checked out much of the trailers for the sequel. I guess, you know, it seems like they're amping up some of the gameplay stuff, like the stealth mechanics seem to be better. You obviously talked about the crossbow. I got to say, when I was watching, there was like a 5-minute gameplay trailer or something. I felt like it was maybe a lot of the same of like lighting up torches and things like that. But yeah, for me, it was like something about the story where I feel like we're dipping a lot back into Amicia's character and how she's progressed and how she's killed a lot of people. And I almost felt like we're going to be retreading the same ground. So I hope that I am wrong about that, and I hope we go a different direction. But even some of the gameplay stuff and the fact that, well, the rats seem to be a big thing in the second game too. I'm hoping that there's some more tricks up the game's sleeve, and they're just showing stuff that is both familiar and you know, people kind of established relationship with. But I'm very hopeful for the sequel. I'm looking forward to it. Seems like a few years have passed potentially. I mean, Amicia and Hugo both look a bit older. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I mean, yeah, I'm really not getting too down on like those things in the trailer that seem like retreading to me, because I'm not going to base the game off the trailer. I'm going to base it off when I've actually played it myself. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I kind of, as I was playing it and just knowing that the sequel's coming, just theory crafting what like the gameplay elements could be a little bit more like. And I feel like I was kind of hoping that it wouldn't be too different because I quite enjoyed like how
Hmm.
this one played. But I would imagine a little bit more expansion on like the crafting system, especially if we have new gadgets like the crossbow. And just the fact we have a crossbow, like yeah, you mentioned like combat might be a little bit more uh just relevant and like there maybe
Hmm.
than pardon me than what it is in the first game. But I haven't seen the gameplay trailer. I'm
Yeah.
excited to just get my hands on it, and I have faith in it because like the gameplay felt very good in
Hmm.
this one in Innocence.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder too, because like a smaller tier studio, you would say, maybe not like a household name. Maybe they are after Plague Tale and Innocence. Hopefully, Requiem's a big game for them as well. But I mean, even if you look at it, like that game came out in 2019. This is 2022 when this is coming out. So I'm thinking that they probably like would have started development on this pretty much right away after this game, making me think that they were anticipating doing a sequel. Maybe regardless of how well the game did, unless it like completely bombed and they had no working capital to make another game. But I mean, I'm sure that Microsoft Flight Sim money helps, push the studio forward and give
Oh
them
yeah.
that like nice frequent budget to fund their next game, and maybe even I don't know. I don't know if they're partnered up with Microsoft. Obviously, Game Pass, this game is in there, so that helps as well to get some money in the door. But yeah, it seems like they were looking forward to a sequel, so I'm sure that any fears I have of like the story retreading something is probably not going to hold any water to it. Like they probably had a good idea of where they would want to go with these characters in the event of the sequel that they would be making right away. So yeah, I don't know if we need a deep dive on any trailers necessarily. I think that's good to keep it there. But yeah, any other thoughts that we haven't gone about? I think, going through it chronologically, we covered a lot of different stuff. But
Yeah.
any other gameplay stuff, any story beats we missed, any characters you want to talk about more?
Um, maybe I'll say a couple more things on Lucas because I didn't
Sure,
highlight him enough.
please do.
I loved how like he was this great just resource of knowledge. It showed
Mm-hmm.
how like intelligent and like just I don't know like a really well equipped apprentice alchemist he really is. But I like that he wasn't perfect. Like he did make not necessarily like gameplay mistakes, but maybe just like story mistakes. Like he thought something was going to go a certain way, but he just doesn't know how to like fully tackle it, and like it totally makes sense because he's not like a full master alchemist. I liked all the moments when he was kind of just super fascinated and curious about like the certain rat's behavior. It just
Mm-hmm.
showed that like scientific method that he has like in his brain and the way that he
Mm-hmm.
just tries to like understand the world around him. Um, and like really everything that went around him, like it didn't feel like out of character. Like everything felt like it was a decision that this character should be making. And I like the little like dynamic that he had with Melly as well. That was really fun
Yeah.
to just
Yep.
witness. And yeah, like again, like I really love this character. I like how like just very like good he was, like especially in the later moments, like when you're kind of forced to like just sacrifice guards and stuff, like Luke yeah, Lucas is just like that's not the way, like you don't have to do that. But then Amicia just like immediately like spits him down, or
Mm-hmm.
spits him down, shoots him down. And like he's not dumb. He understands what they have to do to survive, but he doesn't love it, so he kind of just is quiet in those moments. And yeah, I love Lucas. I can't wait to get more of him going forward, and
Yeah.
just how much of a
Anything you
character
want to
change
see
he
from him?
has. I want to see like more, definitely more like alchemy elements
Okay.
around him, because he does like use some like ignifiers like throughout the game a couple times. He's like, "Don't worry about it, I'll light these ones,"
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
that's kind of it. I would like him to be a lot more, uh, maybe just popping off in certain aspects of that, and just again like I think the balance that they had in the first game with him was really good for me. I liked all the missions that he was on with our characters, and just how he was able to kind of use his smarts to help our characters out in the
Mm-hmm.
different situations, whether it's like trying to understand Hugo's illness or just dealing with the rats. Yeah, I'm definitely, and again, it's because I loved him so much in the first one. It's just like just do it again. Like I loved him already,
Yep.
so more is better in that sense. And same thing with Melly. You kind of were asking me that earlier, and I didn't really
Yeah.
talk about talk about her. She's such an interesting character. Just how like she tries to like, I don't know, like put up these barriers for herself to maybe probably like protect herself because she's just had like a really hard life. Obviously it's super tragic loss of her brother.
Yep.
Like that's a really big thing that could possibly change the character like forever. I could totally understand, or yeah, I could totally see that happening. But I don't know. She definitely, she's got some soft insides, and definitely a good, I don't know, just a good person, and like just even her like dynamic with the way that she would talk about Hugo or something, or just her dynamic with Amicia. Like I love those levels that it was just like the two girls together on the mission. That was a lot of fun moments there. So I'm excited.
Yeah, that bandit camp, just the dialogue they have with each other working together is a lot of fun.
So fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really curious what they do with Lucas in the sequel. I'd love to see, we got obviously that playable sequence with Hugo. I think it'd be cool if they let you play as Lucas for segments of the game too. I don't know if I saw that in the trailer, and I don't know if I would expect that necessarily, but I think they totally could do that. I'd be curious to see what his moveset difference would be. And yeah, as for Melly, like, I guess my question would be, what is the story reason that she ends up with these characters? Because if they did, in fact, get on a boat and go to some island, or even just like further down the coast or something like that, like, how would Melly know where they are? It would be coincidence that she bumps into them in this way different place. I'd be curious. Or maybe maybe there's some line where they told her where they were going roughly, even like, yeah, we're going to this island, this town, even this city, whatever it is, this province, and that would make sense in that way. We could bump in her, but we'll have to wait and see about that. But I'm sure it'll be heartbreaking. I'm sure a couple of these characters might bite the dust. I'm sure we'll get introduced to some other fun new characters. I'm excited to see who else joins the party, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm excited to see those villains, all of it. I'm very excited for this game. And I'm glad that we played this like right now, because there's so many
100%.
little details, right? That it's like, even if I had played this game in 2019, I feel like I would have wanted to replay it this year and getting prepared for the new one. Just remembering some of those story beats, character stuff. And so it's nice that I played it just a couple months ago and feeling nice and fresh on it, ready to go in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kirklin Patzer, do you want to throw a number on this? Do you want to throw a rating, review number?
Yeah, I think I will. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 for this
Ooh,
one.
love it.
Very very high. Totally tugged at my heartstrings. Like I said, like I think it could have been like a 10 out of 10 for me, even though like there was a little bit of janky moments, or maybe like the AI weren't like the smartest, like they were very easy to fool. But like I was just so stuck into the story. But unfortunately, that little like dream sequence, it wasn't that clear for me to follow, and I was a little bit put off by it. But yeah, overall, I love this game. I could definitely see myself jumping back in, like even after I played the second one, just to like, I don't know, maybe one day when I have infinite time, which I don't right now, just like power through the two stories, because it's just so interesting, and the gameplay mechanics were enough to make me want to go back.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat, and yeah, I'm just very excited to see the steps forward they take with things like stealth or combat, even just things like level design. And yeah, I don't know what they'll do for the overall story, but like, just give me more like intimate character interactions, and that's all I need. That's what drives me down to that end game anyway. So we are very much looking forward to it. We'll be reviewing it here on Sidequest. Of course, we'll be checking out the game. I think it'll be like the week after the game comes out, so I don't know if we'll have finished the game, but then I'm sure we'll do like a spoiler discussion on it at some point when we are there as well. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Sidequest will be back next week, of course. Thank you so much. We will see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.